I've been following Doctor Who since I was barely old enough to understand why a blue police box could bend the rules of reality. And let me tell you, there's always been drama behind the scenes. But right now, what's going on with the BBC and Doctor Who makes every other controversy look like child's play? Because if you've been paying attention, the BBC might not just be making future plans for the show. No, they could be preparing for a reboot, a streamer deal overhaul, and possibly a complete shake-up of canon as we know it. But let's slow down for a second. Let me ask you this. Have you ever had that moment where you think you've got life figured out, and then someone pulls the rug right out from under you? That's exactly what it feels like being a Doctor Who fan right now. 1 second, we're celebrating the big Disney partnership and the new golden age. The next, we're reading headlines that Disney might be pulling out. The ratings aren't stable, and whispers are coming from inside the BBC itself. The show isn't safe. And if you're thinking I'm exaggerating, I wish I was. Because just last week, a magazine, yes, a mainstream one, not just fan blogs, quietly suggested that the BBC's current Doctor Who arc could be treated as an alternate timeline. Alternate timeline. Let that sink in. That's not just a spicy fan theory. That's an official media outlet, basically hinting that the version of the Doctor we're watching right now might not even be the real story. Does that sound familiar? It should. Because when studios don't know what to do with their biggest properties, they do the same trick over and over again: alternate timelines, multiverses, canon resets. It's the storytelling equivalent of turning your Wi-Fi off and on again. And the BBC? They're standing at the crossroads. Now here's the real pain point. Here's where the controversy really stings. If the BBC is willing to treat RTD2, the Russell T Davies revival era we're in, as a side universe, then what does that say about all the investment fans have poured into it? The hype, the merch, the streaming deals, the billions of hours of discussion online. Are they about to throw it all under the bus? Because the corporate strategy has shifted. That's the question nobody wants to answer. And I'll be honest, when I read this, my first reaction wasn't even anger. It was confusion. Because why? Why would the BBC want to mess with one of the most passionate fan bases in TV history? Doctor Who isn't just a show. It's Britain's crown jewel of science fiction, a 60-year-old legacy, something that's survived bad budgets, bad scripts, and yes, even bad ratings. And now, we're supposed to believe that the suits might decide to reset the entire thing like a busted video game save file. But here's the secret. What they're not telling you. What the whispers behind closed doors are really about. This isn't just about stories. It's about streamers, money, and the fight for cultural dominance. The BBC is terrified of losing its grip on its most valuable brand. Because without Doctor Who, what's left? You can feel it, can't you? That tension in the air. That sense that something big is being hidden from us. Because they'll give us glossy magazine interviews. They'll give us vague statements from Russell T Davies like, "Behave," when asked about the show's future. But what they won't give us is clarity. And when a studio won't give clarity, that's when the biggest moves are being prepared. Let me ask you this, and I really want you to think about it. Do you think the BBC is brave enough to gamble on a total reboot of Doctor Who? Or are they going to double down and try to keep Disney or Netflix in bed with them, no matter the cost? Drop your theories in the comments, because I want to hear them all. Seriously, you guys usually spot these patterns before the official press ever does. And listen, before I go further, I need to pause here just once. If you're as fascinated by these hidden moves as I am, if you want to keep uncovering the secrets and forbidden knowledge that the mainstream press won't talk about, then you need to subscribe right now to this channel, because what's coming next in this video, it's not just rumor. It's not just hype. It's the roadmap for where the BBC is steering Doctor Who in the next 3 years. Alright, loop back with me for a second, because this isn't the first time Doctor Who has been here. Do you remember the late 80s? The wilderness years, when the BBC didn't officially cancel Doctor Who, but they starved it until it shriveled away. That was the plan back then. To let the show die quietly so they could replace it with shinier, more modern projects? Does history repeat itself? Or are we seeing a completely new strategy? And that brings me to the reveal, what the BBC is really weighing. I've heard whispers of 3 paths, 3 forbidden plans. They're sketching out the new streamer deal. With Disney potentially backing out, BBC execs are in conversations with at least 2 other platforms, Netflix and HBO Max. Both have strengths, both have weaknesses, both come with creative strings attached. If this happens, it will reshape how global fans even watch the show. The reboot. This is the nuclear option. Recast the Doctor, wipe the slate clean, maybe even pull a Star Trek 2009 and say, that was one timeline, this is the new one. Risky. Yes. But it gives them marketing firepower. Doctor Who begins again in 2026. Can you imagine the chaos? The multi-Doctor special 2026? Mark that year. Because the BBC already knows the 10th anniversary of the 50th anniversary. Yes, the math is insane, is too good to waste. And if the reboot doesn't go through, then this multi-Doctor event could serve as a reset button instead, stitching together fractured timelines and trying to repair fan trust. And right now, sitting here talking to you, I can't decide which option terrifies me more, because each one comes with a cost, and the BBC knows it. So which one will they choose? But here's where the whispers get even louder, because this isn't just about streaming rights, or marketing pushes, or a few spin-off experiments. No, what's brewing beneath the surface is something far bigger, far stranger, and maybe even far more dangerous for the oldest sci-fi series in history. The BBC, according to several quiet but consistent leaks, is laying the groundwork for not just one future, but multiple futures for Doctor Who. Picture this. We're not just talking about the usual spin-offs like Uent or Torchwood-style revivals. I'm talking about a multi-layered, alternate timeline strategy where the BBC has quietly considered letting the main show continue and creating a separate continuity reboot to run alongside it. Sound insane? Maybe. But the evidence has been stacking up. Why else would magazines suddenly start calling RTD2's era an alternate timeline? Why else would production insiders begin dropping strange phrases like forking paths and branching stories? It's as if the BBC is preparing audiences for the idea that Doctor Who doesn't just have one canon anymore. And if that sounds exciting, let me twist the knife, because the reality is far darker. Imagine a future where your favorite Doctor isn't Doctor anymore, just a Doctor in a timeline. Imagine investing in stories that, behind the scenes, execs are already treating as disposable branches. This isn't theory, this is a strategy we've seen tested in other franchises. Marvel, DC, even Star Trek. But with Doctor Who, it feels different. More fragile. Because for 60 years, fans have clung to one truth every adventure, every regeneration, every heartbreak. It all matters. The BBC's multiverse play could shatter that truth overnight. And here's the kicker, they're aiming big with 2026. Leaks say the BBC is eyeing a multi-Doctor anniversary-style spectacle. But this isn't just a reunion, not just a nostalgia cash grab. Instead, it's being whispered as the pivot point. The event where timelines collide, where the show branches outward in ways fans can't even imagine. Some say it's their insurance policy if ratings keep dipping. Some say it's a cynical, all eggs in one basket gamble. And some, the most conspiratorial among us, believe this event will secretly erase huge chunks of canon, smoothing the way for a reboot the BBC doesn't dare announce yet. Now, I know what you're thinking. James, is this just classic fan panic? Another round of wild speculation? And maybe, yeah, part of me hopes it is. But let's not ignore the breadcrumbs the BBC themselves are dropping. Doctor Who magazine doesn't throw around terms like alternate timeline. Russell T. Davies doesn't give cryptic smirks in interviews for fun. Every word feels carefully measured, almost as if they're daring us to notice what's coming without ever saying it outright. So let me ask you, what's worse? That the BBC might be rebooting Doctor Who in secret, or that they haven't even decided which version of the show's future survives? And let me throw this to you directly. If the BBC really did a hard reboot of Doctor Who, fresh canon, new rules, old history discarded, would you stick with it? Or would you walk away? I genuinely want to know. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Because this could be the most important question the fandom has ever faced. Because whether we like it or not, 2026 looks less like a celebration and more like a crossroads. And here's where the forbidden knowledge hits. The part they don't want you to notice. Because while fans are being fed shiny headlines about spin-offs in development, and Doctor Who is thriving under RTD, the reality behind closed doors paints a very different picture. The BBC isn't just negotiating with streamers, they're experimenting with ownership itself. Leaked industry chatter talks about licensing out entire versions of Doctor Who to different platforms. Imagine that Netflix funding a darker, prestige-style reboot, HBO Max pushing for a more serialized, adult-oriented take, and Disney, if they somehow stay at the table, wanting an MCU-style interconnected family-friendly universe. Multiple Whos, multiple canon trees, all fighting for dominance under the same brand. Do you see the danger? When every platform has its own Doctor, its own universe, the idea of one Doctor Who, the spine that has held the show together for 60 years, fractures. The character stops being myth and becomes merchandise. And here's the chilling part: the BBC has already tested this concept without telling you. How? B generation. Two Doctors coexisting at once. A storytelling glitch that fans thought was a gimmick. But was it really a gimmick? Or was it the pilot test for a larger plan? Because if you can normalize two Doctors on screen at the same time, you can normalize infinite. Suddenly, every streaming service's reboot isn't fake. It's just another branch. Canon collapses into branding. That's the secret strategy nobody wants to admit. But the patterns are all there if you look hard enough. And let me get personal here, because as a fan, this terrifies me. When I was a kid, watching Doctor Who wasn't about flashy production value or cinematic ambition. It was about this weird, messy, brilliant story that stretched back decades, and somehow, every piece mattered. Losing that connective tissue feels like losing the soul of the show. Maybe I'm being dramatic, or maybe I'm just saying out loud what a lot of you already feel, but haven't put into words yet. So here's my theory: the 2026 multi-Doctor event won't just celebrate the past. It'll weaponize it. It'll give us every face, every era, every wink and nod, all bundled together. And then it'll quietly set the stage for splitting the franchise in two. One path for the nostalgia audience, one path for the reboot. And by 2030, you'll be asking, who's the Doctor? You'll be asking, which Doctor are you watching? And maybe that's the future they think we want. But is it the future we want? That's where you come in. I want to hear it from you. Would you actually watch a Doctor Who reboot if it ran alongside the main show? Would you switch streamers depending on which version you liked? Or would you stand firm and say, no, one Doctor, one story, one universe? Drop your thoughts below. Because this channel isn't just me ranting into the void. It's a space for the Whovians who still believe this franchise has a beating heart. And if you've made it this far, you're exactly the kind of fan I built this space for. So don't just watch, be part of it. Subscribe to BR Bubble episode, join this ride, and together, let's make sure the truth doesn't get buried under shiny marketing and press releases. Because I'll leave you with this: the BBC wants you to think the future of Doctor Who is secure. But the deeper you dig, the more you realize the future is already breaking apart. And maybe, just maybe, it's up to us to decide which pieces are worth saving.